This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like, to check you have the tickets in your wallet first before you drive 2 hours to the big game. Seriously, you had one job. Now the closest you'll get to the 50-yard line is parking lot D. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
Hi and welcome to another mini episode of It's Only a Game podcast. We're going to review game week 7 of Fantasy Football Premier League. We had quite a few different points going around, bouncing around for this weekend. So if we were to look at the highest scoring midfielders in terms of points, we had Saka. Saka had 16 points. I had Saka. I wish I would have kept in Saka thinking about it, but he's on a good run at the minute, Saka, in terms of, is it 7 assists, I should say. I know everyone's bouncing around that the record is 20. So he could potentially get close to that record of 20 assists in one full season. So Saka's at the top in terms of returns for a midfielder for game week 7. I think just behind Saka is Kovacic for Man City, 15 points. He's possibly on the lower end of selection of how many people around the world have actually selected Kovacic. So it's 2.5% of people that are playing the game actually own him, but he got 15 points. And then I think it was Jerry Bowen. Bowen is next, third place in terms of return for midfielders last weekend with 12 points. So that's a good return for people that have the West Ham midfielder there. So let's just have a quick look at defenders. Let's have a look at the defenders. There they are. So the best returns last weekend in terms of fantasy football for defenders is Collins for Brentford, who had 10 points. He's only selected by 1.6% of people that play fantasy football. And we've also got Justin of Leicester, who is owned by 2.4% of the people that are playing the game. And he also got 10 points. So it's looking like the lower end of football players that are owned by percentage of people that are playing the game. But 1.6% only own Collins and 2.4% Justin. Johnny Evans, 0.1% of people who have selected him. He got 9 points. So that's your top 3, roughly speaking, of returns for defenders on game week 7. So it doesn't look like there's any. I mean, obviously, Trent got 8 points and Virgil got 8 points. But if you're looking at the top 3, those are your 3: Collins, Justin, and Evans. Let's take a quick look at strikers from last weekend in terms of returns. Antonio is at the top, West Ham. Game week 7, 18 points. Again, not many people have picked Antonio in their team. That's the 2.1% of people that play in the game. And Kuna for Wolves, he got a 9-point return. 2.5% people own him. And then obviously third, we've got Havertz, who got 8 points. Welbeck, 8 points. And Chris Wood, 8 points, who were all, roughly speaking, in the 20%, 19% and 11% percentage of world players have those players in their starting 11. Sometimes it goes to show that the lower end of the selected football players in the Premier League that you're playing in the fantasy football starting 11 are getting the returns. Sometimes you can't always forecast that, I would imagine, in terms of people do buy the top tier defenders, obviously your Virgils, your Robertsons, your Trents, things like that. You've got a few White, Gabriel, players like those for Arsenal. But I've noticed that the top teams aren't really keeping clean sheets. So I think it's the same again. I think the same over the weekend. I don't think City or Arsenal got a clean sheet. I'm just going to check. I don't think they did. So let's have a quick look. There you go. Arsenal 3-1. Southampton getting 1 goal there. Man City beat Fulham 3-2. Fulham got 2 goals. I'm sure, who was the other one that I was thinking of? Oh no, it was Liverpool. Liverpool were the only clean sheet in the top 3, if you will, in terms of top tier defenders that you could probably pick. That's why there was a high percentage of return on Liverpool players, defenders even, that've got the clean sheet. But we're not seeing that many top tier teams consistently get clean sheets, so it always buggers up my selection in terms of return and who I could pick. So sometimes I just think, should I just put a 4.5 million defender at the back, or a 5 million defender and just hope for the best? Because sometimes I'm not getting the return for the top tier selected defenders. I am in terms of some of my midfielders. I've kept Saka in since game week 1, who was my pick I wanted to keep. And he's been fairly consistent in terms of returning midfield for me. 16 points over the weekend. He was my vice captain, but I probably, all in hindsight, isn't it really? But I could have had him as my captain, really. Disappointments up front for me again with Haaland. It moved heaven and earth, really, to get him into my fantasy team in the wild card from the other week. But no returns for Haaland for me. He's still... Last week it was 4 points, and the week before it was 4 points. And it's sod's law, isn't it, really, that I spoke about this in the last mini rant about fantasy football, that sod's law that you move heaven and earth to get him in, and he doesn't really have any returns. So we're hoping that after the international break, Haaland will get back into form. Was it 10 goals that he scored previously in the first 5 week, or was it 5 or 6 weeks of fantasy football? So that was what people were hoping to get once they selected him in their wild card. Chris Wood seems to be a consistent points tally gainer for me. 6 million. I would, in my opinion, he is a low risk signing in terms of, he's not a 15 million like Haaland in the fantasy football, but 6 million. I start him. He's got a good run. I think he's got a good run in terms of the next 4 games for Nottingham Forest are in the sort of colour brackets are green and grey. So we could get a good return in terms of from Chris Wood for 6 million. Solanke, I know he scored against Manchester United the other week. Let's just see what Solanke did over the weekend. No, he didn't do... I think he got me a few points. But I know Tottenham obviously didn't do particularly great against Brighton. So, yeah, Solanke got me 5 points. It looks like it's just because he's played the game, and I think he's made an assist as well. But I could do with a little bit more from Solanke, because I'm getting, in terms of returns from all 3 of my strikers of Haaland, Wood and Solanke, Wood is the one that's more favourable in terms of return. So I think he got me 8 points over the weekend, which is quite good. It's quite good, and you could say that he's going to be playing against tougher opposition. Obviously, your Liverpools and your Cities, Arsenal, Chelsea, United, Villas over the coming weeks. But the next 4 or 5 fixtures looking promising for Chris Wood, so I'm keeping him in definitely. So I think the stars of the week for me are Saka. Obviously, 16 points is a great return, and it's just a mention for Chris Wood because that's a fantastic. He's consistently getting. It's trickling along with Chris Wood in terms of points for me. Again, my defence, it's looking a bit shaky in terms of return. Not really getting the clean sheets that I wanted. You get Gabriel got me 2 points, Robertson 1. And just to mention on Liverpool, so I think it seems that Liverpool benched Robertson and Diaz, so they only both got me 1 point each. Obviously, that's a rotation thing for Liverpool. But I noticed that I spoke to Femi last week about rotation with Liverpool. He is a Liverpool fan and he's quite interested in fantasy football. He's thinking of putting Jota back in just because he knows that Jota probably consistently plays more than Diaz, or it looks that way at least. I know Diaz bagged a few the other week, but in terms of consistently getting the full game, it looks as if Jota could be the way forward in the next few weeks for fantasy football owners that have him. Who else have I got in there? Mbuma was 8 points. That was a fantastic return. Brentford have got some good fixtures coming up. I'm keeping him in there. And I think that's a wrap on my side for this week's fantasy football breakdown. We might have a voice note from Femi I'm going to try and get some sort of feedback in terms of his opinion of game week 7. So just a quick thank you all very much for listening. This is just a very quick voice note about fantasy football. It's a game that me and Femi particularly like to play. I know Matt's in there as well. On closing, whether you're, 16 points for Saka, whether you got a minus point because you've been sent off like Ward Prowse on fantasy football, always remember, it's only a game. Thank you for listening.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.